Well, joining us now on the program, of course, a lot of areas throughout the Midwest have seen a ton of rain here over the last month or so this spring planting season. Although we've been doing pretty well with staying on our average paces, a lot of folks have had to deal with rain and drying things out before they could continue in the field. Well, what does all the rain mean for our nutrients here this spring and as we get into the summer months? Joining us now for a conversation, he is the Director of New Product Development with the Mosaic Company. Dr. Ross Bender is with us here on the show. Ross, it is great to talk with you again. Thanks for joining us.
Jesse, thank you. Looking forward to the conversation.
Well, let's just start. I know as I kind of set up there, rainfall in the Midwest here throughout the spring and into the early summer here is there's been a lot of areas that have seen plenty of rainfall, no doubt. So, I mean, what issues has that brought about from your side, from an agronomy perspective here, as we get things finished up with planting and get into the summer growing season?
It makes a difference. So I work at Mosaic on our innovation team, thinking about new products. I do farm just a little bit on the side in East Central Wisconsin. And since we finished planting in early May, we've had rain about 14 of the 36 days. So almost every other day, we're getting some sort of rain. Had about 8 inches. And when it comes to nutrient management, everything that we know about how nutrients cycle and are used is influenced by water. It helps move nutrients into the soil. It helps with organic matter cycling and mineralization. It does a number of things. So if some rain is good, more must be better, right? Not when it comes to this amount of water. So the issue that we face is the soil is naturally negatively charged, and some of the nutrients that we apply are negatively charged. Not all of them, but some. Nitrogen, some forms of nitrogen, some forms of sulfur, and some forms of boron. And when some nutrients are negatively charged and the soil is negatively charged, just think like putting a magnet together. Two same ends of the magnet, they sort of repel each other. They don't attract to each other. So that's effectively what we have going on in the soil. A lot of rain forces some of those nutrients into the profile that's either below the root zone temporarily or maybe below the root zone permanently. Too much rain also can cause ponding, and some nutrients can be volatile and they can sort of float off into the atmosphere. So those are the types of dynamics that we're watching out for today.
Ross, what are some of those key nutrients that are more susceptible to leaching? Talk about that a little bit.
The nutrients that should be on a grower's mind today are nitrogen, sulfur, and boron. Those are the three that can exist in some forms in a negative form. And the challenge associated with those is, like I mentioned, they can move deeper into the profile or deeper out of the profile than that crop is going to reach. So if you haven't planted yet, which is the case in some areas, especially where I do farm, thinking about applying fertilizer that has multiple forms of those nutrients. Okay, so you have the 4 R's: right source, right rate, right time, and right place. And nitrogen gets a lot of attention in the 4 R's. Thinking about rate, time, and place, and some of those things interact with one another. But when it comes to the 4 R's, what you want to be thinking about is developing a plan that can hedge against some of these less than ideal environmental scenarios. So if a farmer hasn't planted today and they're going to be spreading fertilizer yet and plant, they would want to make sure that they're selecting options that have multiple forms to extend the availability. If they haven't, then they're going to want to be thinking about some in-season nutrient management techniques. Some farmers like to use dry programs. Some have liquid programs. You're going to want to be customizing your approaches here in the next couple of weeks.
Well, and thinking about that, it sounds like there are a few options for folks to try and manage things yet this growing season, depending on their specific operation, right, Ross?
Right. So in the case of nitrogen, which does get a lot of attention, what you're going to want to be thinking about is how, unfortunately, if you're in an area that has received a lot of rainfall and you have nitrogen that was put out there in an unprotected form, you will most certainly have had some loss, potentially significant loss. So you have to kind of rethink about, how am I going to get nitrogen out there, probably sulfur, maybe boron as well. How am I going to get the nitrogen out there close to the root zone and into the profile during this period of time? We call it the corn sprint, but during this period of time when the crop has this surge of demand. So there's really good nitrogen sources, sulfur or sulfate-based sources. I, on my farm, sometimes use a liquid program. I'm making a couple passes in season. I would encourage farmers to be always splitting their applications. In the case of sulfur, it's not too late as well. Thinking about getting sulfate out there, 5 to 10 more units if you haven't had the sulfur out there already. K-Mag is a great way to deliver that because it has sulfur with the magnesium and the potassium. For the future, however, I would encourage growers to think about how they could focus on the source part of the 4 Rs, the right source. So I'm going to put my sort of Mosaic hat on here for a moment, but there's a couple sources out there that have multiple release properties that hedge your bet against inclement weather conditions. So like Micro Essentials is a great example of a sulfur-containing phosphate technology that has a fast release sulfur form and a slow release that helps protect you, keep something available right away, and it has sort of reserve on the back end. Same thing with Aspire, which is a potash technology that has multiple forms of boron in it. So if it's not too late this year, I would encourage growers to think about those tools to help them. But definitely for future growing seasons, I would encourage them to build that into their cropping plan. And that will help protect you against some of these types of challenges.
Well, I would think as well, tips and tricks like this, or looking at products from Mosaic, etc. I'm sure cropnutrition.com, Ross, is a great place to start and get more information, right?
Cropnutrition.com, that's my favorite place to go. You'll learn all about great sort of unbiased crop nutrition information. If you're interested in learning more about some of the tools that we have, you also can get connected to learn more about those products on that website as well. So that's where I would encourage those growers to start.
Ross, before we let you go, any final thoughts you would share or reiterate to folks as they're thinking about their crop nutrition dealing with wet weather?
Crop nutrition, farming in general, is a very emotional sport. It's a very emotional sport, and part of the difficulty is separating the emotion from sort of the science behind it. I would encourage you to have somebody in your corner that helps you make really good, sound agronomic decisions. My favorite recommendation is to build a strong crop plan right from the start, to try to take some of that emotion out of it and work on that crop plan with your certified crop advisor, and to make sure that you have dynamic tools to weather some of the metaphorical and literal storms in this case.
Learn more at cropnutrition.com. With that, Dr. Ross Bender with Mosaic. Ross, thanks for joining us on the program today. It's always good to talk with you. We will get you back on the show again soon.
Jesse, thank you, and good luck to everybody this year.